Christian bakers found to have breached equality laws by refusing to make a pro-gay marriage cake have asked judges to rule on whether they can appeal to the UK's highest court. Ashers want to take their case to the Supreme Court but need clarity on their legal position first and if further appeal is possible. Last month, Court of Appeal judges in Belfast upheld an original judgment which ruled that Ashers had discriminated against a gay activist for declining his order to make a cake bearing the slogan "Support Gay Marriage." The MacArthur family that runs the store are being assisted by the Christian Institute. Joining me now is their spokesman, Simon Calvert. Good afternoon, Simon.
Good afternoon.
Simon, just explain what's going on at the moment on the case.
Well, it does seem pretty clear from the court rules and from the legislation that it is not possible to appeal directly from the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court, but it is right, out of respect for the court, as well as for other reasons, to ask the court to give clarity on that. So that is what the lawyers for the family have done, and we have been working with them on that, and we will await the ruling of the court on that specific question. And that process is important also partly because if the family made a decision in the future that they wished to pursue this case to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, then they would have to demonstrate that they'd exhausted all of their domestic remedies, and so this would be part of that process, should they wish to do that at some future date.
So they could go higher than the Supreme Court. They could take the case to the European courts.
Oh, yes, of course. Yes, that is an option in cases like this. As I say, once the domestic courts and options for appeal have been exhausted, then the option is there to pursue an appeal to Strasbourg. But the family have not made any decision on that, and so this process is just being worked out right now in order to clarify the situation and to allow them then to consult on what options may remain open to them.
Do we know how the family are doing now?
Do you know what? They're fine. I've just been speaking to Daniel MacArthur, and when they talk about trusting in God, they mean it, and they do have a remarkable piece about them as a result of that. Daniel has just written himself to thousands of our supporters in Northern Ireland, about 8,000 or so homes and churches, and he wrote to say how thankful he was for their prayerful support, and he said it was a joy to take a small stand for Christ and to have opportunities to witness for him in the public spotlight, and they took the time to thank people for how they've been an encouragement to them, to give thanks to God, and to say that they don't feel defeated or dismayed, and they think that God will use things to bring glory to himself. So I can answer that question with confidence. They really are fine. They're trusting in God.
How important is it for you and the family to take this case all the way? Because some people might say you should have stopped by now.
Well, the principles at stake are important for everybody, not just for Christians. And that is why when the Equality Commission sued them in the first place and took them to the county court, that's why they defended the action. When they lost in the county court, that's why they quite properly used the option open to them to appeal. And given that people of all kinds of backgrounds, not just Christians, and not just people who agree with their views on marriage, but people of all kinds of backgrounds, are concerned that the case may set a precedent for other cases like it, which might affect people of all kinds of backgrounds and beliefs, and might involve them in being coerced and compelled into helping to express opinions and views with which they profoundly disagree. So there are important principles at stake. And of course, there's a huge amount of public sympathy for them, a vast amount of public sympathy for the position that the family has been placed in. And, people watch the statements that Daniel makes outside court. They watch the interview that Daniel and Amy, his wife, did on Sky News just recently, and they hear them in their own words, and they realise that, these are just gentle, gracious people simply trying to live out the Christian faith.
Simon Calvert from the Christian Institute, thank you very much for joining us on the NewsHour programme today.